I have never described what's going on in Gaza as genocide. I'm well aware of the definition of genocide, and that is why I've never described this and referred to it as genocide.
Those terms were largely used when millions of people lost their lives in crises like Rwanda, the Second World War and the Holocaust. And the way that they are used now undermines the seriousness of that term.
Speaker, there's been an appalling erosion of the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan, and we all should condemn that suppression of freedoms in the strongest terms.
So British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has suddenly started to care about human rights, particularly women's rights. Yes, this is the same guy who's gone the extra mile in the last 15 months to sponsor Israel's genocidal campaign against Palestinian men, women, children and babies. He's the same guy who punished his own party colleagues and even threw them out of the Labour Party for opposing a genocide and calling for a ceasefire. Yes, this chap who has built his career claiming to be a human rights lawyer went as far as punishing his fellow MPs and denying them election tickets in the general elections for simply calling for an end to the ongoing mass murders of innocent men, women, children and babies in Gaza and elsewhere in the region. Starmer was speaking during today's Prime Minister's questions in the Parliament when an MP drew his attention to the next month's Champions Trophy cricket championship, which Pakistan is going to host, with some matches being played in Dubai. Labour MP Tonia Antoniazzi asked Starmer if he will use his power to impress upon countries such as England, South Africa and Australia to boycott Afghanistan in the next month's Champions Trophy cricket. According to this Labour MP, women's rights were being suppressed in Afghanistan and they were not even allowed to play cricket. And this was a reason good enough for the so-called civilized West to impose sanctions on Afghanistan and boycott cricket. I'm no fan of the Taliban, but these Western politicians still think they can get away with their hypocrisy on human rights and fake concern for human values. Haven't we seen enough of their dirty side during the whole of the Gaza conflict? How they use their powers to sponsor Israel's genocidal campaign against innocent Palestinians? Anyway, responding to this MP's question, Starmer said, and I'm using his words, that there has been an appalling erosion of the right of women and girls in Afghanistan. Just look at his choice of words. Suddenly, he's using the right set of words. He wanted, and I'm again using his words, all to condemn the suppression of freedom in the strongest terms. His words again, not mine.
I wrote to the England and Wales Cricket Board regarding the upcoming game in the Championship Trophy against Afghanistan on the 26th of February. I have met with the ECB and we are calling for the game to be boycotted. I thank everybody for the support that I've had across this House and also at the other place. I also would like to thank very much the Prime Minister for his intervention with the with the International Cricket Council yesterday. But would he please agree to meet and talk to his counterparts in South Africa and Australia that they boycott the games as well?
Mr. Speaker, there's been an appalling erosion of the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan, and we all should condemn that suppression of freedoms in the strongest terms, and that's why we provided additional aid, at least 50% of which we're going to women and girls. DCMS are in touch with the international counterparts on this issue. I welcome the England and Wales Cricket Board making strong representations to the International Cricket Council on Afghanistan's women's cricket team.
When was the last time he wanted us all to condemn the suppression of the freedom of Palestinians by Israelis in the strongest terms? I'm not justifying the Taliban's action against Afghan women, but at least they're alive. Give this choice to Palestinians. Tell them that you can bring back all their loved ones brutally killed by Israelis using the American and British bombs. But they will have to live with similar restrictions that the Taliban have imposed on their women in Afghanistan. You know their answer. So don't you dare even try to project yourself as if you care about Afghan women. You don't care about any women. If you did, how come these same crooks had never taken any action against the Saudi regime, where women were meted out pretty much the same treatment only until a few years ago? But Saudis have been the greatest ally of the West. So when it suits you, separation of freedom is kosher and halal. When it doesn't, you will condemn such actions. These are three utterances of Starmer and his minion David Lammy in the last few months on the ongoing genocide of Palestinians. Watch and make up your own mind and decide whether what I'm saying has any merit in it or not.
Caller Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ICJ has mandated that Israel ensures access to life-saving aid in Gaza under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, yet the Israeli government has voted to effectively block its delivery. As a human rights lawyer, does the Prime Minister agree that banning UNRWA is a breach of international law? And how much more evidence does he need before calling out what is happening as a genocide and acting in line with the UK's responsibilities as a signatory of the Genocide Convention?
I'm very worried and concerned about the decision that's just been taken by the Parliament in relation to UNRWA. There's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and that decision will only make it much worse, which is why I've expressed my concern about it already before today and will continue to do so. It needs to be reversed. It needs to be reversed very, very quickly indeed. I have never described what's going on in Gaza as genocide. I do agree that all sides should comply with international law.
Mr. Speaker, Article 2 of the United Nations Genocide Convention makes it explicitly clear that genocide is not about numbers, it's about intent. And the intent of the Israeli government and the IDF has been explicitly clear in words and in actions over the past 400 days. More than 45,000 innocent men, women and children killed. On the 28th of October, the Foreign Secretary denied that a genocide was even taking place and suggested that the Israeli army had not yet killed enough Palestinians to constitute a genocide. And last week, the PMQs, the Prime Minister started that he has never referred to the atrocities happening in Gaza as a genocide. Will the Prime Minister share his definition of genocide with this House, and will he state what further action he is prepared to take to save lives of desperate and starving men, women and children, given that we now hold the presidency of the United Nations Security Council?
It would be wise to start a question like that by reference to what happened in October of last year. I'm well aware of the definition of genocide, and that is why I've never described this and referred to it as genocide.
Will the Foreign Secretary take this opportunity to say that there is not a genocide occurring in the Middle East?
Foreign Secretary.
These are quite properly legal terms that must be determined by international courts. But I do agree with the Honourable Gentleman. Those terms were largely used when millions of people lost their lives in crises like Rwanda, the Second World War and the Holocaust. And the way that they are used now undermines the seriousness of that term.
That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.